One molecule, one minute particle makes up every single substance we've come to know and love today. They're found in you, they're found in me, they're even found in that chip in the bottom of the Pringles can that you just can't reach when you really want. But to think about it, what's unique about all these things is that there's slight variation in the structure that they're made up of these molecules. And nowhere has this variation been seen in a greater light than in the history of how mankind has accessed information over time. Think about how the US government harnesses technology today. They're seen as the pinnacle site of technological advancement, yet they harness these things for their own gain for 15 to 20 years until it's delineated as outdated technology to them and the public takes public domain. This is how the internet really got started. When in 1964, the ARPANET was created, an internet-connected system of networking between University of Utah, UCLA, and private military bases in Nevada and California. And this revolutionized the way small packets of information were sent from person to person, somewhat like we have Google Fiber or fiber networks today, except very basic. So what was seen is that this was the inception, but it was very much privatized. Fast forwarding to 1984, it became a global phenomenon in the public domain. And computer scientists and engineers of the time really saw the potential of what the internet could become. They said, look at this new domain of how we can communicate with people and how we can interact with interfaces and learn on a new platform. So they said, what can we do to make this better? So, citing back to some of the intellectuals of the time, let's look at Ray Tomlinson, who was the founder of modern email, who actually worked on the original ARPANET project back in the 1960s. Email we still use today, so it has revolutionized the way people have communicated over the past 40 years. Then, we also have famed IBM worker E.F. Codd, who wrote a paper in the 1970s describing how small quantified electrical packets of information could be sent over interconnected webs to access databases such as like Google runs or a website that's privatized, but how we go to it within a few clicks that we can access as long as we have an internet account. That revolutionized the way people could interact and say, oh, I want to learn about dragons or about space travel. Then we also have the World Wide Web and Tim Berners-Lee, who had developed E.F. Codd's idea into the mainstream in the 1980s when the technology was there to make it prevalent. Now, what do you see here? You see two children studying at a desk using a graphic interface that some software developer made. What's interesting here is that over the past 50 or 60 years, this has become mainstream. Public schools and college systems have understood the importance of software. And they've said, how can we incorporate these new resources for our students to learn from? So they have set budgets aside, they've built computer labs in public schools. College students now need computers for their work more than ever to access these databases because the level of information is heightened, but at the same time we can access a wider plethora of information. But what's become interesting is over the past 15 to 20 years, there's somewhat been a decline in the representation of America compared to other developed nations. What we see here is the 2015 International PISA exam, and standardized tests given internationally measuring reading, mathematics, and science results. And as you can see, the US placed slightly below average, the international average of mathematics, and only slightly above in science. This is alarming considering the ease of access we have to compare to other nations that are developed, such as Russia or Australia, things like that. We should definitely be in the top 8th to 5th percentiles, yet we lack that. We rank 34th out of 71 in mathematics. That is shocking. So the way we address these things in the future must adapt to the resources we have available to us. Now, this looks very archaic to us, but this is actually the first graphically usable web browser interface ever created, the NCSA Mosaic web browser created in 1981. What's interesting about this is that this is what people originally had, and this was completely new, so people were engaged to learn. Yet today we see a backwards tactic in the way that people are playing games in high school instead of actually using the resources that they have. So I say that people need to focus more on how this technology was at the time and see what's out there for them to go and investigate and to use these more improving resources to their advantage. Students all across the world now have smartphones in their pocket where they can access most of these information, the apps they need for school. Most of it can be done by your phone. So I contend that while this procureness of information over time has really changed the way we learn and communicate as a society, that we need to harness these abilities and really take heed of what we can do to change the world together. Thank you.